Hey guys, Rilhon here, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to take a look at the Cevic, which is my newly completed White Star build. She was a livestock carrier built in 1893 and she was the next one introduced from the Neronic and the Bovic. And she was very much an upscaled version of them. She got an extra deck of substructure here at the top, as you can see. And she was a one-off. She did not have a sister ship, although the Georgic, who was introduced in 1895, so 2 years later, was essentially an upscaled and enlarged version all around of her. So the Cevic, launched in 1893, her name may derive from the Latin word cervus, which translates to deer. This was suggested by Alex, who helps me with the ships. But yeah, Cevic was originally put on the Liverpool-New York route, and then while in 1914, when World War I broke out, she was sold to the British Admiralty, and she was converted into a dummy capital ship, and she was actually disguised as the battlecruiser HMS Queen Mary, not the RMS Queen Mary, which came later. She was then refitted to carry oil and renamed to Bayol in 1915, and then again to Bayleaf in 1917. And she actually survived the war, which is very unique in terms of cargo ships and the livestock carriers. Many of them were sunk, including the Georgic. After the war, she was sold to the Anglo-Saxon Petroleum Company, and she was renamed one final time to the Pirula, I think it's pronounced. And then finally she was scrapped in 1933, so she served a very long career. But yeah, let's get right into this. So let's turn off the shaders here, it's too laggy. There we go. Let's start with the top here. So we have the flying bridge up here, the same configuration as most White Star liners up to this point. Up to this point they still hadn't added a wheelhouse up top here, they just had it below. They just had some awning spars so they could have some shelter, but on most White Star liners I've noticed that they would add a little wheelhouse or short room or something up here in refits later, so I guess they realized eventually that it probably is better to have a little house here that the crew could go into if they were in a storm or something. But yeah, we have the flying bridge, and then of course down here is the wheelhouse, and then here is the chart room where you would do the charting. This also had some of the clocks on the ship, you know, I forgot the name, chronometer might be called, or the master clock. I think the master clocks controls all the slave clocks, and then the chronometer is a super accurate clock that they use to measure distances, I believe. I always forget. I always mix those two up. But yeah, we have the boat deck here. There are 6 boats in total. Skylight, funnel. Let's head down to the deck below. This is where most of the crew of the ship. I wonder if you heard that my phone notification. But yeah, this is where most of the crew was kept. So let's head inside. Oh yeah, also the first livestock carrier, and probably the last one. No, not last one. Kemrick was the last one. But the first and second to last to have it actually promenade covered like this. So yeah, this would have been decorated probably very similar to other White Star liners of the era, so Teutonic. They would have rather fancy accommodations, if a bit simple. So let's start here. Here is the galley. I should also mention real quick that this is all based on Alex and Sven, their custom plans of this ship and the Georgic. Sven's plan is of the Georgic, Alex's of this one, the Cevic. So we don't exactly know how it looked, but they used descriptions which are very accurate, so I think it probably turned out pretty accurately, so we can only hope. Then also here is a pantry. And of course this would serve the saloon, which is in here, which is where most of the crew would eat and generally hang out, I think. Here are some lavatories. This is for the ladies. I imagine this would probably be very much unused. There probably wouldn't be many women traveling on board a cattle steamer as a whole. And here is a bathroom. And here's for the gentleman in here. Can you hear him cow downstairs? Of course, the reason we have a ladies' lavatory is because passengers occasionally travel with the ship. Most of the time it was actually like cattlemen, or if you wanted to transport your horses or animals, you could travel along if you wanted to tend to them. But sometimes they were just like regular passengers. I imagine it would have been a very cheap ticket to travel aboard one of these ships. But there were 5 of these cabins. Here is the engineer's quarters. So we have the 5th engineer, 4th, 3rd, 2nd. And then here we have the refrigeration engineer, and then electrician, boilermaker engineer, and storekeeper. 2nd engineer, and then we have the chief engineer, which has the larger cabin. Engineer's entrance here, so they can access the engine room. There we go, the engineer room. And then of course we have their mess where they eat and hang out, as well as their lavatory with a bathroom. And you will notice that when I get to Georgic, which hopefully will release next week, this accommodation is very similar. They have very similar layouts. Here's the doctor, first officer, chief officer, little lighting closet. We also have a chief steward in here. The reason it looks like this is because there is a staircase up to boat deck here. Only on this side though. I actually forgot to add this until like last minute. That was a grown-worthy moment though. When I discovered I forgot that, I had to really reconfigure a lot of things here. 2nd officer, 3rd and 4th. Then we have some exclusive crew quarters in here. Here are some petty officers. So we have the master at arms cabin, and we have some stewards. Here's the fireman's entrance, how they access the boiler room. We have a staircase down to the food stores here, as well as a petty officer's lavatory with a bathroom. Here's a little minor locker, as well as some quartermasters. We have a room for the cooks, as well as the chief cook and baker. So that is pretty much this deck house, and this deck in general. So let's head down one deck. From now on it's just some minor crew spaces and cargo holds pretty much. Let's go to the front. So we have the forecastle deck here with the anchor gear. This is actually the last White Star ship to have this configuration with anchors actually like hoisted up on the deck. What later White Star ships would just have the anchors hanging from their little holes here, but they kind of could like be dragged up, so they didn't like swing widely around the seas. Then of course we have some hatches here, as well as a crow's nest, bunch of winches and deck machinery. Also these of course also had these portable deckings here. They could remove it in ports to make loading much easier basically. Here is a deck house. This is where the seamen would have their quarters. Very simple accommodations look like this. And then of course they had their wash place, lavatory. It was noted that most of the crew didn't have access to a bathroom, or at least the cattlemen I know didn't have that, so it was said that they looked forward to getting a bath when they returned home from their long voyages. And then here of course is the first deck of the livestock, the cattle. This was open for some reason. I believe it was just to get better ventilation. And I guess like this provided some shelter and preventing a sort of a wind tunnel. I can't imagine that a wind tunnel would have been very comfortable for the animals, so maybe they had some form of like portable cover, perhaps. I don't know. On Georgic, this was they had like a this was open, and then in the middle it was enclosed pretty much. And then here is another one of these wells. This one was actually permanently open, and then there was that one in the stern. We'll get to that later. So these ones were open for some reason. I don't know why. They had these little bridges, I assume also portable. But yeah, they were open like that. And then here are more cattle boxes. I wish, believe me, I wish I could fill all of these with cows and animals. It would be amazing, but it would lag the hell out of the world. So sadly, I can't do that. And then here's the staircase we saw before, leading down into the food stores. So we'll get to that in a bit. And on this side is just the same though. Let's head out. We have this aft well here again. And then a little bit more cattle space in the stern. In this deckhouse we have the firemen and the greasers, which have worked on the boilers and engines. And yeah, it was a similar configuration with lavatories and bathroom, wash places and stuff. They didn't have a bath, but they did have a wash place, which it worked, at least for the time, but eventually they realized that we should probably add in a bathroom. It's not humane. So yeah, here is the stern with the stern deckhouse. They had this docking bridge on top, and as well as the steering gear house down here. And yeah, that's just like the little flagpole here. This is the red ensign, which is like a civilian merchant navy flag. If the crew had the captain being an enlisted in the British Admiralty or in the Navy, they could hoist a blue version of this flag, but I just have it as red as standard. I didn't know if Cevic's captain and as well as a large portion of the crew were part of the British Navy or not. I don't know. So I have it as red. Alright, so we have the deck below here again. In the bow, the cattlemen had their quarters, it was noted, while on Georgic, like all crew was moved into the superstructure. So Cevic's actually the final ship livestock carrier to have some of the crew members inside the hull, so to speak. But they had very close to their workplace, so that's something, I guess. We also have a wash place, lavatory, lamp room. Check that out. We're transporting some birds here. Here's Oats. Here's Susanna. And here's the bosun's store. On this side we have the carpenter, lamp trimmer, bosun, joiner, and storekeeper. So some more of the petty officers were kept in the bow here. And finally the carpenter shop on this side. And here is Loretta, the chicken. So we have some sheep quarters in the bow here, and then the rest is cows. And then, or live cattle. But then in the middle here we get to some horse stalls. So a lot of these here in the middle. And then here is a staircase down to the food stores. We'll check that out in a bit. And then finally in the stern again we get back to cattle. And then in the stern we have some tarpaulins, provisions. Tarpaulins was used to seal the hatches. We have a store on this side. And that's pretty much that. So let's head back up. We put into spectator. Go to the bow. Let's head down a deck. So in the store we have some just general, did I say store? In the bow we just have some general store spaces. And then from now on we just have cargo holds. So there's a cargo hold, there's a cargo hold, there's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, and there's one. So I'm not gonna go through them. I'll just show you real quick how they looked. They were filled with stuff, you can't really see anything. Also in this one I'm transporting grain, maybe not grain but like food for the livestock, so they didn't die. And then after this we have the boiler room, as well as the coal bunkers, of course. Can barely see, but the trimming spaces is also up here to shift around the coal if needed to keep the ship balanced. Yeah, we have the boiler rooms. This is the same configuration as Cevic, Runic, Nomadic, Tauric, Naronic, Bovic, I think Gothic, and then Jordic as well. So they kept the same configuration of 2 double-ended boilers on the sides and then one single double-ended boiler on each side and then 2 single-ended boilers in the middle. One of these acted as a donkey boiler to power the ship's winches and deck machinery when they were in ports, so they didn't have to have all of these other boilers active. And then further up, of course, we have the engine room here to power the engines, as well as the electric engines to power the electricity in the ship. This is essentially just copied from Gothic's engines, because it was a similar size, so I thought, why not? We have the circulating pumps attached to the condensers to turn the steam back into water. There's a bunch of different pumps and equipment. Down here is the refrigerating engines actually. And yeah, that's pretty much that. We have the what are they called? The propeller shaft alleyways going back here, leading into the propellers. Cevic was the first ship to have this very interesting look to her stern frame. There was just a gaping maw here, like a little arch, instead of just like a propeller aperture, propeller hole. Cevic and Jordic had this, and I believe they were the only ones in Western Fleet to have this, so they were quite unique in that. To finish off, I'm just gonna show you the food stores real quick. Let's go here. Let's head all the way down, so we have the staircase again. Coming down here, and then finally down into the food stores. We have the vegetable room here, and fruits I imagine as well. We have the milk room, as well as the meat room. And then also in this area they had a bunch of what are they called? Refrigerated store spaces where they kept like transported meat and stuff. So you can see even by this point the cattle livestock carriers, that sort of trade was being phased out, and the refrigerated cargo holds were essentially the death of that industry, or not death of that industry, but like it shifted, it evolved basically. So from now on, not many ships at all carried animals. But yeah, that's pretty much that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. On to the Georgic. Take care. Bye bye.